I love you, Cleveland, and I love you, Ohio. And a very pleasant welcome to this week's show. Bonus time with Drennan on the Big Play Sports Network. I'm Bruce Drennan, along with Ryan Smith. Great to have you aboard. Merry Christmas.
Merry
Happy
Christmas.
New Year.
Thank
Happy
you, Bruce.
Hanukkah.
Happy holiday.
Happy holidays.
It's good to be back here on a Wednesday after a Browns victory, that's for sure.
And it's also the start of a great holiday season.
Oh, yeah.
Because we don't have snow. I don't want to jinx us. But, of course, a week from now, I'm heading to Florida anyway, so after that, I'm really not going to give a darn, Ryan.
I'm still going to give a darn. I'll be here left in it.
I know. We will be continuing to do the show while I'm down in the Sunshine State. I am going to do the show every single week like we've been doing here on the Big Play Sports Network, but we, the bosses, the powers that be, told me we will not be doing a show on Christmas week. So in other words, next week we will have another show. This week's version, of course, we're doing today, and next week we'll have another program for you. But the following week, which is the Christmas week, we will not do a show, and then we'll resume right after the first of the year. So what I'm thinking, Ryan, is next week, which will be our last show until after New Year's, I'll cover, do your prep on your end, but I'm going to cover all those big bowl games for us.
Oh, I'd love that.
So we'll dive into those. We're going to touch on that a little bit today, too. But first things first, again, I can't say enough about Flacco. How about this Super Bowl champion who really isn't showing any signs of rust? I got to tell you, that may be the most amazing, impressive thing about him. And, boy, those spirals he's throwing. You know, he should, when his playing career is over, and you know, hopefully he plays as long as he wants to. Look how long Brady went. Look how long Favre went. But when he's done, I think he can make an additional fortune by teaching young kids how to throw a spiral pass.
Oh, yeah.
Oh!
I'll tell you what, Bruce, one of the things that I was most impressed about was you knew with a veteran like him coming in, the pocket presence was, of course, going to be one of a veteran. However, I saw some plays on the tape after it got released. He was way more mobile out of the pocket. That one throw he had, he came out, trailed right, and he threw a laser right on the sideline. It was impressive, to say the least. And he's been, once again, another week of him blowing my expectations out of the water.
Yeah. Did you see and hear his speech to the team in the locker room after the game?
Do you see how silent they were listening to him?
Yes. Including Stefanski, who was standing right there. Including the coach. What, I mean, what else can we do but once again applaud the Browns front office, Andrew Berry, for being able to bring in this old vet, a Super Bowl champion quarterback. I'm amazed somebody else didn't grab him. With
I am
all
as
these
well.
injuries to these quarterbacks this year, I'm flabbergasted. Why not? I don't get it.
And I'm especially shocked the Jets didn't, considering they had him on the team last year, so he's already familiar there. And you knew right when Aaron Rodgers went down, there was a big risk sticking it out with Zach Wilson. But thank the Jets. I'll take him.
Well, they're screwed. That's self-explanatory. They're one of the most screwed up organizations this side of Chicago. The Browns now are in such an advantageous position. And I dare say, and that was fine, they used DTR on a couple of those wildcat-type plays, trick plays, whatever you want to call them. But I don't think we win that game with DTR in there.
I agree.
I'm sorry. Nothing against the kid. You agree, Ryan?
I agree 100%.
I just don't think we win that game. And I applaud Lawrence for playing hurt. And he was hurt. He wasn't at 100%. But you know, the one thing that did bother me, and I have to mention this, it shouldn't have been that hard for us to win the game. it shouldn't have wound up 31-27. It should have been a much easier win. We should have been coasting in the fourth quarter. Now, I know parity in the NFL, so many close games. Look how Baltimore's been winning recently, having to go deep into the fourth quarter and then pull it out. Yeah. But don't you agree that that victory should have been notched long before it actually was?
Yeah, I agree. And you look at it in terms of the turnovers. And to your point, what you just talked about, which is exactly true. If we had DTR and those same turnovers, you could project what happened. There was no way in hell that he would be able to overcome that like Joe Flacco did.
38 years old. 311 yards and 3 touchdowns. And that last touchdown pass, oh, what a great play that was. Jacksonville was totally caught off guard by that one.
Yeah, this is arguably Kevin Stefanski's best play-calling game of the year, and we saw on those two fourth downs, just absolutely beautiful play calling, beautiful play design, and credit Joe Flacco for the execution.
You know, Ryan, you're too good of a producer. Will you stop taking the words out of my mouth before I actually
I can't
say
help
them?
it, Bruce. I can just read your mind.
Very good observation, indeed. I think that, and Stefanski's taken some heat from it for those. And you know what I think that is? I think that's in a large part. I think certainly some of it's justified, but in a large part, I think it's the carryover from the Fred Kitchens era, which was disastrous. But Stefanski is not Fred Kitchens at all. Now, injuries. Ryan, bring me up to speed. Posick, a shoulder. Jerome Ford, a hand. Delpit, a groin right after he gets the extension. What else? How's Ward? Bring us up to date.
Yeah, so we'll start with Ward there. I'm hoping he's going to play this week, obviously. We thought he was going to play last week, but maybe that's a sign that he just wanted to take things slower and make sure he's 100% to go. And that worked out in our favor, thankfully, because we got the victory without him. Jedrick Wills did get knee surgery yesterday, so he's out for the season, unfortunately.
Yeah, and the kid from Ohio State, too.
Yeah, and like you mentioned, Grant Delpit, he is a candidate for the IR, not on there yet. I would really hate to see him have to go on there, especially after he did just get paid. And before he went out, he had a pretty good game. So we're definitely hurting Bruce.
How unlucky we've been with injuries at that tackle position on both sides. It started with Coughlin.
I've never seen anything like it.
Well, we're still in the driver's seat. 8-5. So I like the position we're in. I really do. I really love the position that we're in, especially with Chicago and the New York Jets on the schedule. Cincinnati, we always play well against them, even though Jake Browning is doing very well since taking over for Burrow, who's out for the year. We'll get to that in a minute. But I like our chances. Now, the game in Houston, too, and they're certainly beatable. All of a sudden, they're in serious jeopardy of making the playoffs. They had opportunities with Jacksonville losing, and here they are in a precarious situation. So that game is down in Houston, though, and that crowd is very excited. This is the most they've been able to get excited, even when they had Deshaun Watson. They didn't. You got to go back to the days when they were still the Oilers with Bum Phillips and company. Remember Earl Campbell?
I do.
You're not supposed to be old enough to remember him.
I trust me, I don't have memory of seeing him, playing him, but just from watching, YouTube and all that, you get the gist.
You do your homework. You're a young historian, that's for sure. All right, so we're in a great position for the Chicago Bears coming in. The only fear there, they've been playing a little better. They stink, but they've been playing a little better. And remember, Justin Fields now is returning home to the state of Ohio, so he's going to want to make a statement, I'm sure. But I'd like to think that our defense can get to him and rattle the young Chicago quarterback so he cannot be effective against our great number 1 ranked defense. All right, now let me go through some of the games from this past week before we look ahead to this weekend, as well as games that affect us. That's what I like to do here on the show when I look back and then look forward. So let's talk about Baltimore. As I alluded to earlier, the way they're winning, you know what it reminds me of, Ryan? It reminds me of the way Philly was winning earlier in the year.
You're absolutely correct. Battle the whole way, but they do find a way to pull out at the end.
Yeah. 37-31 against the Rams, who we know are a decent team. We lost to them. That was an overtime game, though. Lamar Jackson, 316 yards and 3 touchdowns. He had 70 yards rushing in that game. They better not get him hurt. And then Tylan Wallace, 76-yard punt return for the winning touchdown in overtime. How about that, the way they won it? Wallace becomes the 4th player in NFL history to score a touchdown on a punt return in overtime.
Wow.
How about that tidbit? Now they go to 10-3, and they're the bosses now in the AFC again because Miami just keeps shooting themselves in their feet. That's another story we'll get to. But the Rams, 6-7 in the NFC, are still not out of it. It's crazy. The wild cards, the league office has got to love this in both conferences because so many teams are still alive for wild card positions, including the Cincinnati Bengals, who we all thought had no chance of making it. But here comes Jake Browning. I remember when he was at University of Washington, and he was highly touted coming out of college. And how many years has he been in the NFL now?
I have no idea, Bruce.
Quite a few, I think.
I would imagine.
Several years he's been in the NFL, and now he's emerging as this backup to Burrow down there, and he's got them really reignited, the fan base reignited with enthusiasm because they can perhaps still make it. They trounced Indianapolis 34-14, and Indianapolis now 7-6. Cincinnati with the win is 7-6. Jake Browning, 275 yards and 2 touchdowns. He had a 122.7 quarterback rating. Are you kidding me? Man. Now at 7-6, Cincinnati is currently the 10th seed in the AFC as they host Minnesota next. Then they get Pittsburgh. Then at Kansas City, no, they go to Pittsburgh. Then they go to Kansas City, and they host us in what could be a vital game for the Bengals, a vital game. Meanwhile, Indianapolis, now at 7-6, is still the number 7 seed and would play at Miami, but not anymore. At the playoffs, it had begun. However, that's going to change this coming weekend because they host Pittsburgh, who's 7-6. Somebody's going to lose there. Then they visit Atlanta. They host Las Vegas and Houston. So the Colts' schedule favors them, especially if they beat Houston to conclude the season. I don't think they're that good, but their schedule favors them, Ryan.
It does, and like you mentioned, how crazy the wild card's getting. Thankfully for the Bills, that was a such needed win over the Kansas City Chiefs. Now they're sitting there at 6-6, or either 7 or 6 or 6. I can't remember. But with Denver as well, right there creeping up, and then who would have thought the Bengals would do what they're doing, managing to win? All I know is I'm glad we have that one game up because otherwise it could get real dicey.
Now we're going to be playing the New York Jets, and they were. How do you explain? This is crazy. How do you explain what they did to Houston last week? 30-6? Are you kidding me?
You want to know a stat that, well, not necessarily a stat, but the tidbit that I was most shocked about I found this morning. Both the AFC and NFC players of the week are Tommy DeVito and Zach Wilson, both New York quarterbacks. How about that?
Well, at least it gives them something to cheer about this year. My heart doesn't bleed for them. C.J. Stroud's worst game of the year, 10 for 23, 91 yards only, no touchdowns, a 54.8 rating in that game. And this performance hurts his Rookie of the Year chances, that's for sure.
It does.
And worse, the team's chances of winning the division or even making the playoffs. Their saving grace is that both Jacksonville and Indianapolis lost. Houston has 2 games remaining with Tennessee, who's down this year. And they host us, and then they conclude in Indianapolis in what will be a huge game. Now, Buffalo, and their win against Kansas City. Where do I begin? A bizarre, rarely called offensive offside penalty negated the tremendous potential game-winning touchdown for Kansas City. Instead, Kadarius Toney was flagged for lining up offsides, and that negated the play that was amazing with Travis Kelce. After receiving the Mahomes pass, his lateral, quite a ways away, by the way. That wasn't a little toss of 2-3 yards to the guy behind him, you know. He had to throw a pass to get it to him. And it was Toney, of all people, who took it then all the way in for the touchdown. Now, those of you who have followed my career know I come from an officiating background when I was young in the Chicagoland area. My father was a football official. He worked all the top conferences in the Chicagoland area. He was the referee of a crew, so he worked all the top high school varsity conferences. He worked small college ball as well. And then when I enrolled at Columbia College to major in radio and TV in this wonderfully fair, non-backstabbing profession, boy, if you believe that, you'll believe that the Guardians have won 7 World Series in a row. But because of that officiating background that you know I have pertaining to the rules, let me tell you about what is called amongst officials preventative officiating. Preventative officiating. The head linesman and the line judge. And not just in high school and in college. This is allowed in the pros as well. The head linesman and the line judge. When those wide receivers on their side come to that side, there's nothing wrong for that line judge or that head linesman to say, my foot's on the ball, line up on me. It's called preventative officiating. It avoids a stupid penalty like this. Now, I have to think that whoever it was, the head linesman or the line judge in this case, on Toney's side, did not do that. But now on the other side of the coin, even if that official didn't use preventative officiating, which he doesn't have to, these are pros. These players are pros. But there's absolutely no excuse for Toney lining up offsides. Because he was. If you look at the replay, there's no question that he was. So, and what's even worse, if that line judge or head linesman did exercise preventative officiating and said, I'm on the ball, line up on my foot, and Toney was still offsides, then there's really no excuse. And isn't it ironic that he gets the lateral pass from Kelce and goes in and scores the touchdown? So it's a bizarre play, and I've actually heard people, well, you don't want to end the game like that. You don't want the officials to decide the game. But how unfair that would have been to Buffalo if you don't call it. I mean, you got to call it.
I can't even fathom a world where they don't call it and it comes out that he was clearly offsides and it's in favor of the Chiefs. The world would be on fire.
That too. But I must say, and I have found out since, you know, Kelce was a quarterback as a young man.
I actually did know that.
And that was gorgeous. That had to be what? 10, 13 yards.
It had a spiral
behind him to the side. Yeah, it was like a Flacco spiral. What? Now, obviously, after the game, that's the most upset I've seen Mahomes ever in his career.
Yeah, by far.
And Coach Reed called it an embarrassment for the National Football League. He has since backed off that statement. The Chiefs are, the Chiefs are still in the driver's seat in the AFC West, though, because they're still the number 3 seed in the conference and still in the driver's seat in the AFC West. And meanwhile, Buffalo 7-6 stays alive for a wild card in a very crowded field in the AFC. But they had to have that game. It was a great game again.
It was.
Great game again. All right, now let's get to our next opponent, the Chicago Bears, who, and here's another one. Can we now all agree, after what we saw on Thanksgiving Day and what has transpired since, that the Detroit Lions are pretenders? Ryan's hesitating.
I'm going to say they are. I'm going to give that the stamp of approval. I was more so hesitant just because, it's hard to put that label on teams sometimes. But from what they've shown, it's weird, right? Because they beat the Chiefs week 1, and they've shown great signs that they can be a very good football team. I do think they have some discipline issues, and then it comes with the territory, right? Dan Campbell's that kind of coach. He wins you games, but sometimes he takes inadvertent risks that end up losing you games. And I'm not saying that's what happened in this specific game, but it's what comes with the territory of having a coach like that. But I would say, Bruce, for the sake of this, they are pretenders in the sense that I don't think they can make the NFC Championship, let alone the Super Bowl.
I think it's, as I've said in the past, I think it's very healthy for the NFL that they have emerged as the front runner for that divisional crown. But now they fall to 9-4 following this 28-13 defeat at the hands of the Chicago Bears. Amazing. The Bears, our next opponent, this is the story of two teams heading in opposite directions. The Bears have won 2 in a row and 3 of their last 4 games. Meanwhile, Detroit, division-leading Detroit, has lost 2 of their last 3 games, and the lone win was against New Orleans, and that was a lucky 33-28 close decision. However, the Lions are still the leaders by 2 games in the NFC North and the number 3 seed in the conference. Now, Justin Fields had another good game, and we'll look forward to coming back here to the state of Ohio to challenge our Browns come Sunday. Next, the San Francisco 49ers again made a statement by defeating Seattle soundly. 28-16. The Niners are rolling. Purdy, 368 yards and 2 TDs, and McCaffrey, 145 yards rushing. San Fran, now the number 1 seed in the NFC. That's because Dallas did a job on Philadelphia. Unbelievable what's been transpiring in the NFL. 3 teams now with 10-3 records over there. Dallas, 33-13 over Philadelphia. The Eagles are reeling, losing 2 in a row, and the Cowboys are surging, having won 5 in a row, and that's 15 in a row for them at home. As a result, Dallas, now the number 2 seed, will host a playoff game or 2 if they maintain that seeding. Now, Dallas, we've talked about them before. They're an intriguing team because we just don't know how they will perform in the playoffs. They've been such an underachieving franchise in the postseason for so long under Tony Romo, and then now Prescott. But how about Dallas kicker Brandon Aubrey, who became the first kicker to make 2 field goals from 59 yards or more in the same game? He did it against Philly Sunday night. He didn't even play. Get this. He didn't even play high school or college football.
He's a soccer guy, right?
Right. He played soccer at Notre Dame. And his wife said, "You got nothing to lose. The worst they can say is, no, why don't you try out for the NFL?" And he impressed Mike McCarthy. And He is a perfect 30 for 30 in field goal attempts this year for Dallas. What a story that is. Amazing. And then Monday night, as Ryan touched on a little earlier. Now, here, Green Bay, their fans have got to be going insane. And my first job in broadcasting was my first full-time job in broadcasting was in Manitowoc, Wisconsin. That's right up there by Green Bay. Believe it or not, I was a country DJ. I was so bad. They kindly asked me to leave after 4 months.
I would have loved to seen that.
I'm actually amazed I lasted 4 months, to tell you the truth. But those are rabid fans up there. Oh, God, they've got to be going insane.
Yeah, I think what's tough about it is because you've gotten kind of a tale of two, whatever you want to call it, right? Because we've seen shades of Jordan Love playing super, super well.
Like on Thanksgiving against Detroit.
Exactly. But then you've kind of seen him flutter. And he didn't play necessarily horrible on Monday night. He did have that kind of weird turnover. It was kind of really a dumb throw, not to sugarcoat it. But then you can say they were without Aaron Jones and Christian Watson. However, that defense couldn't contain Tommy DeVito. He was running out there like he was Michael Vick.
Oh, brother. 25 years old, this DeVito. And 32-yard pass to set up the game-winning field goal. And this loss makes Green Bay 6-7. And believe it or not, they are still the number 7 seed in the NFC if the playoffs were to begin today. The LA Rams, Seattle, Atlanta, and New Orleans are all also 6-7. The Packers' schedule, I think, actually favors them making it because they host Tampa Bay, travel to Carolina and Minnesota, and then they get Chicago at home to close out the regular season. But that's their arch rivals. You never know. But anyway, and then Tennessee defeating Miami 28-27. The Titans become the first team since 2016 to trail by 14 points with under 3 minutes remaining and come back and win the game. It's Miami's first loss at home this year, and Miami's top-ranked offense was held scoreless in the first half. Hard to believe. This loss drops the Dolphins to 9-4 and elevates Baltimore back into the number 1 seed in the AFC. Now, Miami is still securely in first place in the East with a 2-game lead over Buffalo with only 4 games left to play. However, they get the New York Jets and then Dallas, Baltimore, and Buffalo to conclude the season. They're not necessarily, right now you'd have to pick them. But if it comes down to that last game against Buffalo, and the head-to-head is going to decide it, that game, can you believe that? Especially in the dire straits Buffalo found themselves in?
Yeah, and you go look at this Dolphins team. You see Tyreek Hill get injured. He's on the sideline for a bit, and their offense completely flutters. You can tell that the whole offense runs through him. And obviously, why wouldn't he? He's the fastest receiver in the league, probably the most shiftiest, and some would say even the best overall wide receiver in the league. But then you see what happens to that offense when you don't have that weapon in there. It shows a sign of vulnerability. And not only have they not beaten a great team, no marquee wins this year, then you go ahead and lose to not only did you lose to a Tennessee Titans team at home, but you lost to a Tennessee Titans, or was it on the road or was it at home? Do you remember, Bruce? I believe it was home.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That was a home. Oh, yeah, absolutely. That was a home.
And
game.
then you lose to this Titans.
They have their streak broke.
You not only lose to this Titans team,
they had their streak broke.
But the way you lose to that Titans team, absolutely utter collapse. It's unacceptable, and they give me no faith to trust that they're a playoff team that could actually make a run.
Yeah, we thought that they would beat the teams they were supposed to beat. Well, here's a team they were supposed to beat at home with that streak going and everything, home undefeated, and here they blow it. So I don't know how to figure them. Unless these lines have changed, correct me if I'm wrong, Ryan. I don't know last time you checked them, but we're only a field goal favorite over the Bears? Seems like it should be more.
Let me pull it up. So right now I have it at Cleveland -3.
Yeah. Indianapolis -2.5 at home against Pittsburgh. Cincinnati 3.5 at home against Minnesota. Boy, that Browning. Baltimore -3.5 on the road at Jacksonville. Detroit 5-point favorite at home against Denver. I'll tell you, Denver's worth a look. The way Detroit's playing. Watch, Detroit will beat them by 30. Tennessee -2.5 at home against Houston. Not showing Houston any respect, huh?
That's very surprising to me. I'm assuming maybe they're factoring Stroud might not pass the concussion protocol. I believe he's in it, so maybe that is it. But I can't believe that line.
Okay. Kansas City, big 9.5-point favorite at New England, unless they can find somebody else besides Kelsey to catch the ball. Kansas City.
Yeah, it's.
Dallas is getting 2 at Buffalo. How about that? Now, has that line, check that line. I checked these, what did I check them? Yesterday, I think. Check that line today.
Yeah, it's still, let me find it. It's looking like Buffalo -2.5.
Unbelievable. And then Philadelphia -4 at Seattle. All right, now before I go to break, have you had a chance to observe what I brought to your attention a couple of weeks ago about these stupid props that producers force on-air talent, like holding a football, and, so stupid. I can't believe it.
I still forgot to monitor it. I'm on, after, as soon as the show ends, I'm putting a note in for the Thursday night and then Sunday morning. I'm going to observe every single one.
All right. Don't forget now, next week I want to hear an observation from you. All right, when we get back, we'll dive into the bowl games. They're all coming up. I want to start previewing them, give you a little bit of national championship history as we continue with Bonus Time with Drennan on the Big Play Sports Network. Now, here is the risk that Brown had to take with Great to have you back with us. Bonus Time with Drennan, this week's version. I'm Bruce Drennan along with Ryan Smith. Need bet credits for the football season. Still a lot of it to go, obviously. Well, the Big Play Network presented by Tipico Sportsbook. The Sportsbook app has your traditional bets like the money line, spread, and point totals. Tipico. Also, lock in player props and check out the Big Play boosts every single week. Back your favorite Cleveland teams and athletes with the best odds in Ohio. And this football season, using the promo code 100 to get bet $25 will get you 120 bet credits. So check it out. Bet with Big Play crew all season long. Tipico Sportsbook. We've got a tweet, I understand, so fire that before we dive into the college ranks.
All right, tweet. It's kind of a long tweet here, so I'll break it down for you. The viewers can read it all if they'd like on the screen there. But basically, Browns Football Forum, what he has to say is that Stefanski, until he can show that he can bring this a Super Bowl talented roster to compete for a Super Bowl, he has underachieved. He said, this is a 2-win football team without Jim Schwartz.
Well, first of all, it's not Stefanski's job to bring us a Super Bowl caliber roster. Is that what he said? Read that again.
So he's basically saying that until Stefanski has shown that he can get us to that promised land because we have a Super Bowl roster.
Oh, I see. Okay. Well, we have a lot of injuries, too. I mean, every NFL team has injuries. I hate to use that as a cop-out or an excuse, but we do have a lot of injuries. We talked about how crippled we are at the tackle position on both sides all season long. You lose your starting quarterback and Deshaun Watson. You lose arguably the best running back in the entire NFL and Nick Chubb. I mean, come on.
It feels a little bit disrespectful to call the Browns a 2-win football team if they didn't have Jim Schwartz.
Yeah. So, all right, I don't know what it's going to take to please guys like that. I guess, break Don Shula's record of going undefeated the whole year. All right, let's get into the college ranks where, of course, we're anticipating the big games between Texas and Washington and Alabama and Michigan. Alabama, by far, has the most national championships of any school. They have 17 of them, and it is just amazing what they've done with Saban. I mean, 2009, 2010, 2011, 2012, 2015, 2017, 2020, just an amazing record under Saban at Alabama. And here they are. And when you consider the way they beat Auburn with that last play, what are the odds of Milroe throwing that ball into the coffin corner with good coverage, good defensive coverage, but to pinpoint that pass to enable the receiver to even possibly catch it, considering it was good coverage? In that, what are the percentages that pass could be positioned that long? It was 4th and goal from what, the 31 or 32?
Yeah, they were deep.
And to put that pass into the coffin corner like it was, I mean, what are the odds? What is the percentage? You could do that. You could run that play 50 or 100 times in practice and never complete it. I mean, it's just amazing. And here that vaults them into, gives them motivation against Georgia. I don't think the score indicated how they controlled the game against Georgia. And then now they're up against Michigan. And I like them against Michigan myself. Michigan is a slight favorite, 1.5-point favorite, but I like them against Michigan. So we shall see. Now, meanwhile, Michigan has won 11 national championships, but their last one was back in 1997 when Lloyd Carr was the coach. They have a whole ton of they won the very first Rose Bowl, which I believe was 1902. And that was declared the national championship. The other two teams are Texas and Washington. Washington has won 2 national championships. They won it back in 1960, and then they won under Coach James in 1991. Texas, of course, has had 4 of them. In 1963, under Darrell Royal, that was the game in which Texas beat Navy, and Roger Staubach was the quarterback of Navy. Texas and Navy were both undefeated that year, met in the Cotton Bowl for the national championship, and Texas beat them soundly. But Roger Staubach was the quarterback of that Navy team. They won again in 69. In 1970, they tied with Nebraska and Ohio State, so they shared the national championship, and then they won their last one in 2005, and that was Vince Young. So there you go. And as we look at the games, Texas is a 4-point favorite. Now, that's of a few days ago. I don't know if that's changed much. I think that's justified myself.
I do as well, Bruce. I'm with you also on that Alabama pick, right? Arguably the hottest team right now with that magical moment against Auburn. But then you go ahead and defeat the 2-time national back-to-back champion. And like we talked about, this whole year has been the first half of the season is a completely different than the second half of the season for Jalen Milroe, right? I think Michigan's a great team. However, I'm going to take the hottest team in the playoff right now with the best coach, with the most experience. And then I like Washington to cover that +4, but I do think Texas is going to win that game.
And, I'm sick and tired of these bleeding hearts that have emerged since the committee made their decision. These bleeding hearts for Florida State. Oh, God, what a tragedy. Oh. I'll tell you where the tragedy is. You're going to tell me Georgia is not one of the top 4 teams in the country, and just because the timing of their loss in the SEC championship game prevents them from getting into the playoff, they could very easily have won it again. Don't give me that bleeding heart crud about Florida State. Georgia's playing Florida State in the Orange Bowl, and Vegas has got Georgia a 14.5-point favorite.
That might not be enough either.
I agree. Huh. So, I dare say I think Ohio State would beat Florida State.
Yeah, Bruce, a really good point that I heard about the college football playoff in the committee was, so they didn't do it right either way, because they didn't put the 4 best teams in, because me and you and everybody I think would agree that Georgia is one of the 4 best teams in the country. That's fine. However, then if you were going to go ahead and make it, okay, well, we're going to go and put in the 4 most deserving teams.
Yes.
Didn't do that either. Why? Because Florida State did go undefeated, and in that definition, they would be the most deserving. So people are a little thrown off because it's like you didn't take the 4 best teams, and then you didn't take the 4 most deserving. So it kind of gets mixed up in there. And, all the analytics and the eye test, everything that I can't fully comprehend goes into it, but it does kind of seem like a shame.
Now, this all, if Jordan Travis was in there, it's a whole different argument.
Yeah.
And they would have been in. But don't tell me that Alabama's not deserving. They're definitely deserving. You beat Georgia, the defending national champions, the last 2 years with a 29-game winning streak in the SEC championship. And I don't want to hear that you shouldn't go by the conference. The SEC is still the superior football conference in this country. How can anybody argue that? Look at the bowl records going back I don't know how many years. So there's that. Now, and it's a shame, I've touched on this too. It's not just the 2 semifinal games that we should be looking forward to, but here during the holidays, we should look forward to other matchups in bowl games. And the committee picks the Cotton Bowl, Peach Bowl, Orange Bowl, and Fiesta Bowl. So Ohio State's playing Missouri. Because we're Ohio State fans, okay. Penn State and Ole Miss, okay, that's a decent matchup, I guess, Big Ten versus SEC. Georgia, I think, is going to kill Florida State with the freshman third-string quarterback. I'm sorry. Unless Georgia is just totally non-motivated, considering they didn't get into the Final Four and losing to Bama. And then Oregon against Liberty. Come on. 14.5-point favorite, Oregon is. Now, other games, North Carolina, West Virginia, big deal. Louisville, Southern Cal. Caleb Williams already declared he's not going to play because he doesn't want to get hurt. And I understand that. Oak State, A&M, Oklahoma, Arizona. That may be a decent game. Clemson, Kentucky. Notre Dame, Oregon State. They could have chosen Notre Dame to play somebody more formidable. It would have been a much more attractive game and a higher rating. I really am glad Fickle got the Wisconsin job, but it's going to take him some time to rebuild that program. They're playing LSU with the Heisman winner. We'll get to that. Iowa and Tennessee. But here's the point I want to make. This coming Saturday is when the bowls really start. Now, at 11 o'clock in the morning, the Myrtle Beach Bowl will be staged. Don't drink too much Friday night, or you're going to miss the kickoff between Georgia Southern and Ohio University.
Oh, man.
Even though you're young, Ryan. At noon.
I'll be sleeping through that.
The Celebration Bowl. It's going to be difficult to turn away from Georgia Southern, but boy, you're going to be tempted to turn away and watch the kickoff of Howard and Florida A&M. What's Howard's nickname?
I have no idea. Let me do a quick search.
Don't hurt yourself. At 2:15, the New Orleans Bowl. Jacksonville State against Louisiana. Oh, we get to see Deion Sanders. Oh, no, he's at Colorado.
Howard is the Bison.
The Bison? What's Florida A&M? You knew I was going to ask you.
I should have prepared.
Then, at 3:30, the Cure Bowl. Here's one you definitely don't want to miss.
Florida A&M is the Rattlers.
I used to see them occasionally when I'd go to spring training in the desert. Appalachian State and Miami. At 5:45, the New Mexico Bowl. Speaking of the desert, New Mexico State, they're going to have the big home field advantage there against Fresno State. But this may be the best of all. At 2:30 next Monday, at 2:30 in the afternoon, the famous Toastery Bowl. Famous Toastery.
What is a toastery?
You may want to take off work to see the kickoff of this one. Take off early on Monday to see the kickoff between Western Kentucky and Old Dominion. What's their nicknames? Then Tuesday at 9 p.m., you definitely want to stay up to watch University of Texas San Antonio and Marshall. And others that are of tremendous interest. The Camellia Bowl. Arkansas State against Northern Illinois. I know NIU, that's the Huskies. The famous Idaho Potato Bowl. Utah State and Georgia State. That'll be a dandy. And then the Ventures Bowl on Christmas Eve. Now, I'm spending with my beloved wife, Jacqueline, Christmas and New Year's in the Keys. We check in on Christmas Eve. And I want to make sure that I'm all settled in so I can see the kickoff of South Alabama and Eastern Michigan. Let me tell you. And finally, last but not least, at 10:30 on Christmas Eve, I got to take a nap because at 10:30 at night, the Hawaii Bowl between Coastal Carolina and San Jose State. How do you miss that one?
You can't.
Must-see lists. All right, our congratulations to Jaden Daniels of LSU, the quarterback. He wins the Heisman over Bo Nix, Michael Penix, and our guy Marvin Harrison. He was an ASU transfer. 3,812 yards passing, 50 touchdowns in his LSU career, 52 and 35 win over Florida. He had 372 yards passing, 234 yards rushing. Amazing. First player to throw for at least 350 yards and rush for at least 200 yards ever. And what is that? The third LSU Tiger, I believe, Ryan, to win it. Obviously, Burrow was one. Who was the third?
I'm not sure, but I don't believe the other one was a quarterback because I believe
Was it Billy Cannon? It might have been Billy Cannon. That's way before your time. Might have been. I'd have to.
It is.
Is it Billy Cannon?
Billy Cannon.
Yeah. He was a running back and a real good one way, way, way back when I was a kid for the LSU Tigers. And never made it big in the pros, but in college he was outstanding. And then the last thing, which we touched on last week, and I was flabbergasted by this, Kyle McCord entering the portal to transfer to another school. And I don't know about you, Ryan, but I heard that it might be Nebraska.
I did hear that. I heard there was actually I believe it was $900,000 NIL deal for, I believe, Honda, because McCord. I believe.
Plus, the nightlife in Lincoln is just
can't miss, right?
Unbelievable. How can he turn that down? All right, when we come back, I've got some baseball news for you. We'll dive into the Cavaliers on Bonus Time with Drennan here on the Big Play Sports Network. Now, here is the risk that Brown had to take with. All right, wrapping things up here, our last segment on this week's version, Bonus Time with Drennan on the Big Play Sports Network. The Cavaliers coming off a couple of losses. Orlando, 104-94. In that game, Garland with 36 points. No Mobley, of course, he had the bad knee, still out with the bad knee, including last night with Boston, 120-113 victory for Boston. Close game until Boston pulled away at the end. And they are, what are they, undefeated at home this year, I think, so far, Ryan.
I believe they're 11-0.
And up by 10 after the first quarter, but, that means nothing in the NBA. The Cavs were up. Mitchell had 29, Garland 26. Again, do we know how long Mobley's out?
I don't, Bruce. I hope it's not a long time.
I'm not sure. At 13-11, the Cavs are presently the 9th seed in the East. And then tomorrow again, the Cavaliers will play Boston Saturday at home against Atlanta. All right, now let me switch to baseball where, oh, by the way, did you see where Green?
Where Green?
I mean, Green of Golden State was kicked out again for slugging.
His third ejection already.
Yeah, already this year. What opposing player said he needs help?
Something needs to be done because it is kind of getting out of hand. I get he's the villain of the NBA, and maybe after Dylan Brooks kind of took that rollover, he got jealous and wanted it back. I'm not sure what it was, but he's wrestling people on the basketball court.
Can you imagine if he was in the NHL as a hockey player, what an enforcer he would be? Wow. Well, Shohei Ohtani has made his decision, and what a decision it is for 10 years, $700 million. Hello. Biggest contract in all of sports history. Prior to this signing, the longest in baseball was his former teammate Mike Trout, a 12-year, $426.5 million deal. But the fourth-reigning MVP to change teams in the offseason, he's the fourth-reigning MVP to do it. In 2017, Giancarlo Stanton traded from Miami to the New York Yankees. In 2003, Alex Rodriguez was traded from Texas to the New York Yankees. In 1992, Barry Bonds, who was a free agent, left Pittsburgh for San Francisco, where he started juicing. But I'll tell you, though, you've heard me over the years, if you follow my career, Bonds, to me, was so entertaining. I have never seen pitchers intimidated by a hitter like they were with Barry Bonds. They were afraid to throw the ball in the strike zone. And when you intentionally walk a guy with first base occupied, let alone intentionally walk in a run with the bags juiced because you've got more than a one-run lead for fear that he's going to beat you. I mean, it's just incredible. And I'll tell you something else about Bonds that impressed me when he played, juice or not, his knowledge of the strike zone. The umpires really respected his knowledge of the strike zone. They didn't give him the benefit of the doubt on borderline pitches because he was Barry Bonds, because he wasn't popular. They gave him the benefit of the doubt because it really was a ball. His knowledge of the strike zone, maybe the greatest I've ever seen. At any rate, let me move on to Ohtani. In the late 50s and the early 60s, I want to look at the best trios now that he has joined the Dodgers with Freddie Freeman and Mookie Betts. In 1929, you have Babe Ruth, Lou Gehrig, and Tony Lazzari. In the late 50s and early 60s, the Yankees had Mickey Mantle, Roger Maris, and Yogi Berra. In 1962 and 63, the San Francisco Giants had Willie Mays, Orlando Cepeda, and Willie McCovey. In 2023, the Atlanta Braves had Acuna, Matt Olson, and Austin Riley. Also last year, the Yankees had Aaron Judge, Stanton, and now they've got Juan Soto. And Texas, Corey Seager, Adolis Garcia, Marcus Semien, and Philadelphia, Bryce Harper, Kyle Schwarber, Trey Turner, and San Diego, Manny Machado, Fernando Tatis, and Xander Bogaerts. But the contract that Ohtani won't be able to pitch next year because he's coming off that surgery.
Exactly.
So he'll just be a DH for the Dodgers. And it remains to be seen where Yamamoto will sign, the tremendous Japanese pitcher who's going to make a decision. By next week, I think we'll have a decision on him by next week's show. Also, then Cody Bellinger. There's another kid from Japan that's coming over. And so we'll see. But as far as the Guardians go, they're in a bit of a dilemma, as all the middle-level markets are, because of the television network going bankrupt. So the teams haven't gotten their money to meet payroll as of yet and use that money to go out and get free agents. So they're in a bit of a dilemma. But the Guardians did secure the number 1 pick in the 2024 draft. 5 times Cleveland has picked second, but never first. So the Guardians had the 9th highest chance of winning the pick. And 5 times previously, getting the second pick, they chose Steve Dunning in 1970, Rick Manning in 72, Greg Swindell in 86, Mark Lewis, the shortstop, in 88, and Paul Shuey in 1992. What else from the winter meetings? Of course, Yunu Gonzalez went to the Yankees, the former Indian, who I thought was a 30-30 guy. We're still awaiting a trade. Even though the Guardians may not have the money to sign a big free agent, I still think they may sign a lower-tier pitcher if they trade Bieber. A lower-tier starting pitcher. Now, they did sign, they're bringing back a backup catcher, Austin Hedges, on a 1-year, $4 million contract. I think that's a good move because what it does, and to make room on the roster, they let Christian Betancourt go. They traded him to Miami for cash consideration. But I think this is a great move because he'll tutor Bo Naylor. And Hedges is fantastic in the clubhouse and a fantastic defensive catcher who knows how to handle pitching staffs. He'll be very beneficial to Bo Naylor. And then, obviously, the other signing was the free agent right-hander Ben Lively, 31 years old, spent last year between Cincinnati, the Reds, and AAA Louisville. In 19 games, he had a 4-7 record in the big leagues, but 12 starts he had with the Reds. So he's a guy that can be versatile enough to either start or relieve. The one that gets me, and I mentioned this last week because I have the utmost respect for Jeff Passan, the writer, he broke that the Guardians might be open-minded to trading Clase. Now, if that occurs, they certainly, with him out there, they can get a bona fide bat. The question is who. But they and what they would want in exchange for Clase is a bat who's controllable for the next 2-3 years, contract-wise. But if they do that, that means they've got Barlow, who they picked up in the De Los Santos deal. So they can put Barlow into the closer's role. He's got closer's experience. But then do you trust Stephan and Karinchak and Stephan to be your 7th and 8th inning guys? That's the question. Now, they got Lively, but they made him as a starter, especially if McKenzie's still injury-prone. So we'll have to wait and see. But what is forthcoming is news on Bieber, and if indeed the Guardians decide to trade Clase. We will see. And last but not least, former Indian outfielder Vic Davalillo has passed away. He played 6 years for the Tribe, longer than any of the other major league teams that he played for. He hit .278 for Cleveland while he was here. He wound up being a member of 2 different World Series championship teams. He was with the 1971 Pittsburgh Pirates, who beat Baltimore in 7 games in what I consider one of the greatest, more entertaining World Series that I've ever seen. And he was also part of the 1973 Oakland A's team of Charlie Finley that had won 3 World Championships in a row, 72, 73, 74. Davalillo was on the 73 team that beat the New York Mets in 7 games when the Mets upset the Big Red Machine in the National League playoffs. He was from Venezuela. He was 84 years old. However, some other outlets had him at 87 because those visas were a little precarious back in his day. Vic Davalillo. That's all the time we have for this version of Bonus Time with Drennan. Hope you enjoyed the show. We'll be back with you next week. We look forward to having you with us next week, and we'll preview all the bowl games, handicap them for you. On behalf of Ryan Smith, my producer, I'm Bruce Drennan. You have a great week. We'll see you next week here on the show. Until then, as always, and most importantly, you remember, I love you, Ohio.